Thank you, Mr. President. Give me just a second. We can't push the speak button and also look at the resolution at the same time. Another weakness of our system. So let me just pull up the section that I'm going to rely on when I tell you why I'm not going to vote for this tonight. So I went back and watched the June 13th meeting we had, and we talked about raising the rate to 136, and we weren't raising it. We were saying the maximum. We did raise it to 120. I realized this year we're not raising it any. We're keeping it at 120. And that was a frustrating meeting for me. I watched this kind of go round and round. The mayor told us there were experts that told us the way we should go on this. And, I think if any expert didn't think the fairest way to do this was to calculate the amount of impervious surface on everyone's property, then they're not an expert. That is the fairest way to do it. Whether we can do that or not, Ms. Lavoie told us that would be very difficult because of tree cover. We've been told it could cost $150,000 to do. But as I read this, if we adopt this resolution, in section 7, it says, the adoption of this annual stormwater assessment resolution shall be the final adjudication of the issues presented herein, including, but not limited to, the apportionment methodology, which I do not agree with. I think that the brackets that we have for property are not fair to some people, and I realize that some people in there would benefit if we went one way or the other, but ultimately I want fairness, and I don't think that this is the fair way to go about it. I've not gotten a breakdown on how much it would cost to go with actual assessment of each individual property owner's square footage or whatever we're talking about. I don't know if it's the footprint of the building, because obviously if you have a 2-story building, your footprint is going to be different than your square footage. And I think that we need to be fair to the people of this city, and I don't think that the way we're apportioning this currently is fair to them. So I'm not going to support it tonight. It doesn't mean I don't support stormwater assessments. I just don't support this. We've talked about this for over a year. The mayor can hire all the experts he wants to. Council doesn't have all the resources that the administration does to hire experts, so we have to rely on his experts. There's no doubt that a lot of cities do it this way. That doesn't mean it's right for Pensacola, so I will not be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Patton.
So I'm also troubled that, we get this before us. I mean, last year was the first time, and of course we had lots of questions, but we went forward with it because obviously I think all of us felt like we needed to increase the stormwater assessment to be able to deal with some of the things that are looming that we need the money for. However, I don't think our concerns were taken seriously, I guess, by the administration. I said the same thing a few days ago in our budget meeting, and the only way to get our concerns addressed is to vote against something, apparently, and then we will hopefully, have the administration come back and listen to us. And listen, I mean, I'm not saying that the mayor doesn't actually listen to our concerns on a lot of things, so that's not really, I don't want it to be some sort of general point, but I feel like on this particular issue, enough of us have said we're concerned about how we're doing this, and we just keep getting the experts telling us that this is the way we're going to do it. And I guess I'm a little frustrated that we didn't get a little more thoughtful response, to be honest with you. So I don't actually know what I'm going to do tonight on this particular item, but I do feel like, I guess at some point, the only way to really get somebody's attention is to say no, and then I'll get their attention. So I'm weighing my options at the moment. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Breer.
So I agree with both of you. And I think that last year when I personally, I very specifically said that I would vote for it last year, but only if we did the assessment before this year. And I'm okay with sticking with the same amount of money this year and doing it the same way. I'm not okay with agreeing to the methodology. I think that Councilman Bear is exactly right on that. And also, in what we were sent initially Monday when we asked for this stuff, there are plenty of cities that do it literally by the ESU. It's not that that's uncommon either. So when I got the rolls last year from the tax collector's office, they have a footprint. So the initial footprint went by the bottom story plus the original front porch, back porch attached to it, something like that. We've got that footprint, and that's what we use for this, pretty much. We can do that with a true ESU. And the idea that it wasn't even considered, and honestly, I always hear, we're not gonna talk about things, we're gonna listen to the experts, listen to the experts. I'm gonna tell you, Amy, the other day when she brought up the normal distribution being based on this, that was what they used. And I have to say, this one time, I'm actually the expert on that, and I don't agree with the way it's being used. I mean, Don and I were talking about it. That's like saying 67% of the people in a class are going to get a C. And the C is going to be that middle 67%, and it might be a 57 to an 82. But every one of them is going to get a C, and then there's going to be, 5% above and 5% below, and all that kind of stuff. And humorously, twice the courts have deemed me an expert in statistics. So by law, I literally am one on this one. And I feel like we were disregarded as well. And so I also am going to vote no. And I'm hoping that you vote no as well and support this until we get a cleaner evaluation for the future of how we're going to go forward. Thank you.
Ms. Lavoie, I see you coming up. Mr. Mayor, did you want?
Yeah, I just want, again, I know you guys saw all the assessments, and I'll use the same analogy I always use. I don't think any of the 7 of you or anybody in the administration would fight against what we would believe to be the most optimal way. That also has to be balanced with efficiency. And I'll use the same analogy I always use. The most fair way to handle sanitation is to measure by ounce how much garbage somebody produces and charge them accordingly. But there's a reason we don't do that. And as you guys are probably aware, there's a list of 32 cities in Florida, a mix from Tampa to Milton to Gulf Breeze, that the largest set of any of the 32 of the example that you saw had 4 different categories. So there's 2 different conversations happening. One is what's ideal in an idealistic world. And again, I just would ask, then why aren't we the outlier? Why is every city in Florida, if this is easy to do and we should just be doing it, I'm just wondering why Tampa, Orlando, Milton, Gulf Breeze, Deltona, New Smyrna Beach, all of these cities not only either have the same we have or less than we have. So I understand now that we do have different experts with different opinions. I just am saying this is coming. Yes, we are going to take expert opinions who do this for a living all over the state of Florida. And if we don't want to take that opinion, then I just am curious as to why are we not the outlier? Why is every other city, because I certainly would be alarmed by that too. If every other city had 5, 6, 10, 100 categories, then I just am curious why we have different sample sizes of different populations all over the state of Florida, either having the same or fewer than we have. So it's just something to ponder, and then I'll let Amy speak.
Ms. Lavoie.
Sure. I want to back up and talk about the basis for a stormwater assessment. The basis of a stormwater assessment is that the assessment has to be fairly and reasonably apportioned based on the special benefit that is conveyed to the property. So it has to be fairly and by the special benefit that is to the property. So it may not be something that's something like it's everybody equal or by square footage, because it has to equate to the special benefit to the property. So what the methodology has been since I believe 2009 when it was initially started was the special benefit to the property is based on the impervious square footage based on these categories. The categories have remained relatively the same since 2009. There was a revision done that tweaked the square footage at one point, but the categories have stayed the same since 2009, which was done by a study, and we actually still employ the same firm to be our consulting firm on this to establish the fair and reasonable method that they felt was legally defensible on this stormwater assessment. That's the reason it's done that way. And it may be more fair to measure the actual square footage of the impervious area. And if there's AI out there that does that, that would be fantastic. But how much how much more money do you want to spend in order to draw the actual impervious surface of the area of each property every year. And I know that, and I did look at the square footage of the category that you asked me to, Councilmember Patton, and I did determine that about 88% of those fall in the category, in that larger category, that even if we shortened that category up like you were requested, you're still only going to move out about 200 properties into a different category. So I do want to make sure you're aware that the basis for this has to be a special benefit derived to the property. So that's the reason the methodology was established back in 2009.
Can I ask you this? So there's been, it's maybe too anecdotal of speech, but there's been some votes kind of precast. If we didn't support this evening, what happens? Does the stormwater fee go? It goes away. There is no stormwater fee levy this year. Okay, so I can speak very clearly for me. I don't see anybody looking to speak first, so I'm going to get my first bite at the apple before I call seconds. But water quality for District 4, I can tell you, is every single year one of the top issues. And I can tell you just from my own personal story, the whole reason I'm sitting up here is because of watching the ugly cycle of politics, the entropy of it, where people begin to make decisions about people and about who hurt who or who offended who. And who loses in that equation is the people that we represent. They send us here to do the battle, to put on our stretchy pants and do the silly battle of, lucha libre for their benefit. And I think we're in a potentially dangerous place. This council has worked really, really well together, but if we start casting votes where potentially the people of Pensacola lose this program, that I don't think there's any doubt it's of great public benefit. If we start casting those votes, we're jettisoning the good work and the good collaborative work that this council has done. This is an extremely valuable program, and I certainly can't vote against it. Maybe there's a way to do it that's better, and I think we aspire to do that, and we have meetings and work collaboratively to do it, but to throw off the whole program, that seems like a very, very bad precedent to set and a bad direction to go. And I'll say it's a gray issue. There's places in East Pensacola Heights that don't have a curb and gutter. I know one individual, he's growing, I toured his house several years ago. He's growing bananas, he's growing papaya in his backyard. It's almost like a rainforest in his backyard. He doesn't have a curb and gutter. He literally digs little tunnels from the road. He attracts the water off the road into his lot and uses rainwater off the street to irrigate. And if you went to his house right now and said, we're thinking about putting curb and gutter, he would be very upset. How do we measure, this program is to mitigate those stormwater fees. We would have to pay him money for his, individual impact to the larger watershed. So I would ask council to please reconsider. I don't think we want to jettison this good program. And if we need to work more collaboratively, I think we need to have some individual conversations with the mayor. But I don't think the way to handle it is to jettison the stormwater fee, which is something that's extremely valuable to Pensacola. Councilmember Breer.
If I may ask Councilmember Baer a question.
Sure.
Where in here is the wording that you reiterated? Because I'm looking for it and I'm just not finding it right here.
Section 7 is where it is on page 6 of the actual resolution.
So can we do something where the methodology is for this year? So that I'm sympathetic to the argument that council president is arguing here. I do agree with, I don't want to see stormwater go away here. However, I asked very specifically, I was told last year that we would reassess this year before we looked at it again, and there is just pretty much a no. And I would like at least one more year before I don't want it to go up anymore, keep it where it is, and that this method be used for this 1 year. Can we, so I would look, so in the adoption of the resolution, the adoption of this annual stormwater assessment resolution, that this will be the final adjudication of the issues presented herein for the fiscal year of 2026. And let it stand on that alone.
Does this come back to us every year, Amy? I mean, couldn't we just make, I think a loud statement has been made that we would like to explore alternate methods, and I certainly can't speak for the mayor, but I can't imagine he doesn't hear what's being said here.
Well, I felt like I was heard last year. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. I thought I was heard loud and clear last year, and I worked on it, and Amy and I looked at properties, and we were able to, I was able to pull her property up from an overview, get the exact ESU. I mean, it's not, look, here's the deal. If this costs $150,000, I disagree wholeheartedly that every property has to be reassessed every single year. You get one solid assessment, and then when there's a permit pulled to expand a property, then you reassess with something like that, which we're not doing. We're sending people out there. We're not reassessing when they're expanding on their houses and expanding on the footprint. But we get a single, if it's $150,000 for a true assessment, for us to draw in over $5 million every year. That's not absurd to do it correctly. I mean, so kind of humorously, if you had a person with literally only 100 square feet of impervious surface, and they're being charged at 1,100 square feet in that same category, to me, this is not responsible. Look, everyone else, I don't care to hang my hat on. Everybody else is doing it wrong, so we're going to do it wrong. Or everybody else is doing it unfairly, so we're going to do it unfairly. That does not make sense to me. It doesn't settle with me. It doesn't seem like responsible to the citizens of any way, shape, or form. So for me, unless we do something that modifies that we assure that this is going to be done differently, I mean, I can once again extend for 1 year, but I think that's it. And I don't know exactly if it's coming back to us, maybe, but I am very frustrated that it came right back to us without an assessment.
I wonder if we couldn't schedule a workshop. That's something that we could.
Till a workshop?
No, I wouldn't want to do that because we explore a new way to assess it. I'm sure that that's not a snap your fingers and the the new ESU rate structure is established. I think we start where you were at, that we approve this, for 1 more year, and then let's get a workshop scheduled. I'll work with the mayor's office. I can unilaterally, as president, call for a workshop, and we'll get one scheduled, and I'll work with the mayor and Amy let's find out who these experts are on stormwater fees and how they're assessed, and let's see what options are there. I don't mind bringing it back as an item. Hey, here's the 3 experts that we found, and the council can decide who the expert we want to listen to is.
How many commercial properties are there within the city of Pensacola? Amy? We've got 22,100-ish residential properties. And then we already do this. We already know this. We know we already do this for everything over 5,000 square feet, right? So they're getting a true assessment. Even if we went down by one category and said, okay, now we're grabbing the next category down, and we're going to do a true assessment there. Then we do grab the next one down and the next one down until we, have a plan. But there has got to be a way to responsibly do this. And I am frustrated. I am frustrated about it.
All right, Councilmember, are you?
Thank you,
All
sorry.
right, Councilmember,
How many?
2,000 commercial
2,000.
properties. Is that by their zoning? I mean, I know some commercially zoned properties are used for residential. I mean, is that?
So the source of data for the assessment role is the property appraiser's data. It's the same data that you would see if you look at your assessment on the tax roll. So based on that, it's about 2,000 properties, and I can do the math real quick, but it's about 2,000 properties that are commercial properties, and that would be that one. So, but remember, if you move your methodology away from from what is a property appraiser says, he has a whole database associated with it, then the city is responsible for creating that entire database and maintaining it. If we're not going to use that set of data, when we have to invent our own set of data, then that 24,000 parcels that we have becomes the city's responsibility to
Okay,
maintain.
and to that, just very clearly, even in given their data, we could have done an actual ESU.
So I had conversations with the property appraiser last year, and
I did too.
if you recall, I used my very own property as an example of why you can't look at that property appraiser's data the way it's presented and determine the impervious square footage. If you recall, I was like, I have a living area, and I'm one of the few houses probably in the city of Pensacola where my garage is underneath my house. But if you look at the property appraiser's data, you don't see that garage is underneath the house. You see the living area and the garage. So if you were to extrapolate the impervious square footage of my house right there, you would get it wrong because my garage does not add on to the impervious square footage.
Okay, this is what I'm saying though, Amy, is that the data that the property appraiser gives us is still the data we use. Yes?
It is still the data we use to determine, but remember, that's why you use the equivalent stormwater unit rather than go out and look at the data and add it all up and say that's the impervious square footage. Because you've got to look at, so if you look, my own very own house, you look at the livable square footage, you've got a porch, you've got the garage, and based on that, each one of those individually, if you could tell me what the impervious square footage of my house based on that and adding it up, I'll buy you a lottery ticket because I can almost guarantee you're going to get it wrong looking at that data. That's why you go with an equivalent stormwater unit, so that you can divide into these categories and you can make these assumptions and define this methodology.
1 year. I'll do it 1 year.
All right, as long as you don't send me home tonight having to tell, I had emails today about people ferocious about what goes in that, the watershed. Councilmember Broughton? You're good? Okay, Councilmember Patton?
So, for the very reasons you pointed out, Council President Moore, I was on the fence because clearly we need the stormwater assessment to deal with the issues. But I would also say, I agree with you that the taxpayers are the ones that lose if we don't get the right things across the finish line, but they also lose if we do something that isn't, the right thing to do from a methodology standpoint or something else. So and frankly, the reality is, I won't say gone along, because that's probably the wrong way to put it, but I have supported things that were not perfect because it was for the good of the city and it was for the good of the taxpayer. And there have been, several times where I wouldn't have done it quite that way, but I am deferring to administration. And so that's just part of our jobs. But where we all voice an opinion, or some of us voice a very strong opinion that we want something looked at before it comes back to us, and it doesn't get that attention, and then it comes back to us, and then we have to pass it, because if we don't pass it, the citizens lose. That starts becoming problematic for me. So I will support this tonight. I would love, and I'm going to support because I would love a workshop on this. I would love the city to bring in the folks that can help us. And maybe this is actually right and we're wrong. I'm okay with that if that's the outcome, but I want to go through that process and I want to make sure that we're doing it as best we can. So with your wonderful suggestion on following up and doing a workshop before we ever get here next year, I will be more than happy to support this tonight.
Great.
And we will avoid any kind of issue with our stormwater assessment.
Good. Councilmember Broughton.
Yes, so are you saying that pass it, but then who's going to follow through to make sure there's a workshop?
I'm telling you that I'll get with the mayor, with Don Yvette and the mayor, and we'll get something scheduled, and I'll keep you apprised. And if not, hey, next agenda conference, you can call me right there on the floor. The cameras will be rolling, and the mic will be.
Where's my workshop?
Yeah, where's my workshop? Right.
I pushed my button, but the only one I'm showing as speaker is myself, so I don't know if I'm not connected or.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, you got the floor.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I know Ms. Lavoie said this would die if we didn't do it tonight. What is the deadline to get this done? Is it tonight or is it September? Do we have a deadline?
The assessment roll has to be to the tax collector, meaning the resolution has to be prepared by September 15th, I believe, by state law. So we have to have that done. But in order to do that, you have to have the resolution, the assessment roll prepared and finalized and to the tax collector. And I believe the next regularly scheduled council meeting is the 9th or the 8th.
September. Right.
Something like that.
That was my question. Just a couple comments as I turn my technology over. I've heard a lot of different arguments here. The issue is we use the footprint that comes from the property appraiser. That's what we use. So I don't see a problem with using that footprint to assess individual properties using that. It's not perfect. I'm not saying we can capture the impervious surface, although again, that would be the best way, but there's really no good way or cheap way to do that. Unless we go out there and look at every single property and we're good at assessing which pavers are pervious and which are impervious. I had somebody in my neighborhood put in pavers and I thought they were pervious, that water would go through, and I asked him, it's like, oh, that's great, you put in pervious pavers. Like, no, they're not, there's cement under that. So you don't always know. I mean, parts of my house, I've got pervious pavers, parts of it I have cement. I just have to say, Mr. President, I probably shouldn't say anything about this, but I feel like you're admonishing some of us for wanting to be political, and this is not political. Just like you, I've got a constituency, looking out for them, looking out for the fairness. It's not something between me and the mayor. It's not because I don't like the mayor or something like that. It has to do with what I think is fair for the people of my district, the people of the city. And for you to say that's political, that's the reason I'm doing this, I take offense to that.
Okay.
I'm putting my constituents first. I hate that we've been backed in this corner, and I see it's going to pass tonight. Some of the comments that we've had, we barely even had a second for this. So it was really interesting to watch that. Very few things have I seen that happen where we didn't get a second. I think one of them was when there was some negative thing about me back when I was running, or when I was on council before, that never got a second. So I've not seen that very often. So I think there's definitely some hesitancy here. We have some time until it's due. I realize it's only one meeting away, but I still can't support this because I feel like we made our concerns known last year and they were not addressed. So I won't be supporting it, but I think the votes are there. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any additional speakers, so please vote. Motion passes 4-2.